Hello and welcome to yet another session of In Dialogue Foundation Certificate Course in Dialogue Studies 2024-2025. Today we have the pleasure of having with us Dr. Rajendran Govender, and he will be speaking on the power of dialogue in bridging divides and fostering social cohesion. Dr. Rajendran Govender is the Executive Director of Mzansi Empowerment Enterprise, a consultancy that focuses on skills development and training, research development, diversity management, mediation and reconciliation, and project management. Dr. Govender also serves as a social cohesion advocate with the Departments of Arts and Culture, Republic of South Africa, and has been tasked to head a rapid response task team to address issues related to racism, xenophobia, gender based violence, and other social ills that confront society. Dr. Govender was the past chairperson of the Ford Foundation International Alumni Association for 3 terms, where he was responsible for developing leadership for over 450 Ford Foundations, Masters and PhD graduates. He regularly features on national TV and radio as a cultural commentator and a newspaper columnist. He is the founder member of Prioritizing Education Now. Dr. Govender received numerous awards, including the 4 Outstanding Young South Africans Award, Minister's Award for the Most Outstanding Official in the Departments of Arts and Culture, and the Love to Live Nelson Mandela Peace Award. Dr. Govender, you have up to 2 hours for the session. You may leave as much time for questions and discussions as you like. Sir, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Pragya. And it's an absolute delight to be on this virtual platform from South Africa. I bring you very warm greetings from a very warm and sunny South Africa. It's 3:34 here, tea time here, while you all are ready to have dinner. So all the very best. So I'm very happy to be part of this series. I must hasten to add that I had visited Delhi last year as an IPSA fellow, India, Brazil, South Africa fellow. I was based at the India Habitat Center at RIS, the Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries, where I was awarded an IPSA fellowship to research on the promotion and protection of traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge systems, with the focus on traditional medicine in India, Brazil, and South Africa. And that was my first interaction I had with the India Log office in Delhi. And I was very amazed with the wonderful work that they're doing in terms of promoting dialogue, peace, harmony, tolerance, etc. And equally important was this very, very important 6-month training program on dialogue. So I was very, very happy. And when I was approached this year to give a lecture to this cohort of students that are participating in this, I grabbed it with an open hand and an opportunity for me to share some of my knowledge and experience as a social cohesion advocate in a government of South Africa. So my role today is to talk about the power of dialogue in bridging divides and fostering social cohesion, because dialogue is key in society. The problems that we are experiencing all over the world is because of the lack of dialogue. So I'm hoping that after today's lecture and after interacting with all of you, we would be able to find some sort of solace in understanding the importance of dialogue in this particular aspect. Now, in a world where division seems to be the norm, colleagues, whether it's across political lines, religious beliefs, or cultural backgrounds, dialogue stands out as a powerful tool for bringing people together, fostering understanding, and building cohesive communities. The aspect of dialogue is missing in many of those countries where there's serious problems. People are not willing to sit around the table and discuss meaningful solutions to mitigate the varied problems that are experienced in society, socioeconomic problems, geopolitical problems, etc. And that is why I'm hoping that we can find some sort of understanding about how we can now, through our studies in the 6-month program, go back into our communities and inject the importance of dialogue in overcoming some of these serious problems. Now, first of all, what is dialogue studies that you have embarked on for 6 months? Dialogue studies is an academic and practical field that focuses on the theory and practice of dialogue as a tool for understanding and engagement. It is about creating conversations that transcend differences and build bridges between people. The idea is not to build walls, but to build bridges. I'm going to give you an analogy of this. There was this 2 brothers that lived next to each other. And they lived very well. Their families always visited each other. They were neighbors. In fact, they visited each other. The wives should speak over the wall and not dialoguing, but maybe gossiping, but still they were talking. The children should go and play with their cousins, and they had a very, very good relationship. But something happened that destroyed this very good relationship between these 2 families. They did not want to visit each other. The children were banned from going there. The wives were not allowed to talk to each other. So they had a serious rift. Now, one day, one of the brothers were visited by a carpenter who he was doing casual work, and he was going from house to house. And he came to one of these brothers and he said he's a skilled carpenter, and is there any work that he can do? So the owner of the house said, yes, I have some work for you. We are going to go to the shop. We are going to the mall, and we're going to be spending the whole day in the mall. So behind my house, there's a whole lot of planks, wooden planks, and there's a box with nails, and there's tools and everything. I want you see the house next door. I want you to build a wall between this house and that house, a high wall where we cannot see next door. Right? So the owner said, okay, we're giving you the whole day. We'll come back and we will look at your work. In the evening, when the owner came back, right, and because the carpenter, in his own wisdom, found that there was some serious problem here. So he said, in his own gesture, instead of finding a wall, right, the owner of that house found a bridge that was built between the 2 houses. And he was shocked and amazed. Now, as they drove in, he and his family, his brother next door with his family started walking across the bridge and coming towards them, because they, in their own mind, thought that the brother was now making friendship and he's trying to renew the friendship. So they walked across, and this family walked across, and they hugged and embraced each other. So the whole purpose of this analogy is we must stop building walls between people, between our neighbors, between our families, between our community, between our society. We need to start building bridges. The more bridges we build, the better it is for society to live in. Right? So this dialogue studies is attempting to assist you to build those bridges. In the various communities that you serve, you go out there, my dear colleagues. Whether it's Solomon, whether it's Rishikanta, whether it's Zishana or Jay or Izaz or anyone, go out there and build bridges. What is the relevance of dialogue studies for today? With the increasing polarization in societies around the globe, the ability to engage in meaningful dialogue has never been more crucial. As you know, with all the problems that we're having in Palestine, with the Israel, the issues in Europe, all over the world, in Turkey, in South Africa, in Congo, in different parts of Africa, right? There's so much of polarization, right? And the ability to engage in meaningful dialogue has never been more crucial. Dialogue is not just about talking, it's about listening, understanding, and creating connections that can lead to lasting change. That is what dialogue is. It's not about listening and understanding, but connecting society, connecting members of society, bringing people together in a nice, informal way. Right? When I say informal, when you sit together around the table over a cup of tea and having a dialogue with somebody, it's better than standing and giving a lecture to somebody, because by doing that, it is very informal and it's not very it is very formalized, and it doesn't augur well for bringing about meaningful solutions. On the other hand, having a dialogue with somebody, you will give them the opportunity to listen, but also to participate rather than just listening. And I'm hoping throughout this lecture here today, anytime you're ready to ask me anything, you more than welcome. But for the purpose of continuity, I will continue, and then you can ask questions later as well. Right. So let's go on now to the importance of dialogue. Now, I'm going to use two historical perspectives as an example. Right. There's two perspectives that I'm going to use. Is the one in South Africa and the Northern Ireland dialogue process. Now, these two processes will give me and will give you a good understanding about what dialogue is. Now, the first one is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is called the TRC Commission in South Africa. The context and the background of this TRC Commission. South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established in 1995, 1 year after the great miracle in South Africa when there was a new democratic dispensation. And this TRC Commission followed the end of apartheid. Now, as most of you will know, apartheid was a system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination in South Africa, which oppressed the non-white population of South Africa, particularly Black South Africans, including Indians and coloreds, for decades. The minority white government that was made of the Afrikaner, with Dutch background, they were in control and they created apartheid. Apartheid was so sinful, colleagues. We lived and we grew in this environment where people that were not of white were put in townships. For example, the Indians were put in various townships. The Indians were separated from the blacks and coloreds. They were put in their own townships. The blacks lived in their own townships, and the coloreds lived in their own townships. And the whites obviously lived in the most affluent suburbs with lots of amenities and lots of high standard schools, universities, and so on, and mediocre resources were given to the blacks. That was what apartheid was all about. And for many, many years, we lived like that. We were not allowed to go to the same cinema. We were not allowed to sit on the same benches in parks. We were not allowed to go to beaches. There were separate beaches for whites, and there were separate beaches for non-whites, right? And if you were caught in a white beach or a park or whatever, you were fined and you were jailed. So it was a very, very bad period. It was a dark period of South African history, the apartheid period. However, in 1994, following the release of Nelson Mandela, who fought, and he and many other people spent years in prison, right, because of trying to bring about equality and bringing about a democratic dispensation. And because they were fighting for a good cause, they were put in jail, Mandela, for 27 years. Now, after they were released, then in 1994, there was a peaceful transition, right, to a new democratic dispensation, with Mandela being the first Black president of a democratic South Africa. Now, I must tell you, because we are talking about dialogue, one of the first things that he did, dear colleagues, when he was released from prison, one of the first things he told his aides to do is to arrange for him to have tea with the architect of apartheid, P.W. Botha, right, who was the president of South Africa, who was very vocal against blacks and so on. So he told his aides, please arrange for me to have tea with the people that put me in prison. So he went to the home of P.W. Botha and he sat around the table. And instead of harboring hatred, he told P.W. Botha, I am here to embrace you and your family. I am here to tell you that I am here for the people of South Africa. And I have I'm harboring no ill feelings against you. I am here just to have a dialogue with you so that we can find common ways in which we can take this country to new heights. Now, that's the type of person Mandela was. And one of the things that he initiated in order for the transition to democracy, it symbolized the election of Nelson Mandela in 1994 and necessitated a process to heal the wounds of the past left by apartheid. The TRC was designed to address the atrocities committed by all sides, both the apartheid regime as well as the liberation movements. Both of them, committed atrocities. The apartheid regime, because of the manner in which they ruled, and the liberation movements by killing and bombing and doing a whole lot of things in order to have equality, right? And this conflict-ridden period was from 1960 to 1994. So that period was the focus of this dialogue called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now, what was the purpose of this commission? The purpose of this structure, the TRC's primary mandate was to promote reconciliation by uncovering the truth and gross human rights violations that occurred during apartheid. It offered victims a platform to share their experiences, and perpetrators could come forward to confess their actions in exchange for amnesty. Now, look at what a wonderful man this Nelson Mandela was. He offered victims to come and share their experiences, but at the same time, he said, perpetrators, you have done wrong, come forward and confess your actions, and you will get amnesty. The TRC was composed of three committees: the Human Rights Violations Committee, the Amnesty Committee, and the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee. So the human rights violations, that committee looked at all the human rights violations that took place during that 1960 to 1994. The Amnesty Committee was a committee that found purposeful and meaningful ways to give amnesty to people. And the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee was a way of reparation and rehabilitating both the victim and the perpetrator. So these three committees were responsible for giving meaning to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a very popular clergyman, was the chairperson of the TRC that sat over many, many months. And he emphasized the principle of restorative justice over punitive justice. This approach aimed at healing the nation through acknowledgement of the past rather than retribution. The role of the TRC, dear colleagues. The TRC exemplified the power of dialogue by facilitating difficult, honest conversations about past violence and injustice. The victims were given a voice, and the perpetrators had to face the reality of their actions in front of the people they had wronged. Now remember, this TRC committee was open to the public. So people could go, the victim's family could sit there, the perpetrators' families could sit there, and they all, it was such a wonderful experience where the victims and perpetrators came together, and at the end, they embraced each other. And, you must remember, during the apartheid, people were killed because of the apartheid government. They were bombed and they were treated very badly. So can you imagine embracing those same people that put you in that bad condition? Now that was what was so remarkable about the TRC Commission. The process acknowledged that no meaningful social cohesion could occur without confronting the painful truths of the past. So you can't have social cohesion if you can't confront the truths of the past. The open hearings of the TRC helped the nation witness the horrors of apartheid, leading to collective acknowledgement and promoting reconciliation. That was the open hearings because anybody could attend the hearings. Now, the significance of the TRC for social cohesion. The TRC played a crucial role in South Africa's transition to democracy by creating a shared history that the nation could acknowledge together. It highlighted the importance of inclusivity and transparency in addressing conflict. The TRC's ability to foster reconciliation through dialogue, despite the risk of reopening old wounds, was a key factor in its success. In other words, dear colleagues, look at what dialogue could do. Although it had the risk of opening old wounds, but it was a key factor in the success of coming together. It enabled many people to heal and laid the foundation for more unified society. Remember, we're coming from a very, very bad past, and to bring everybody together overnight would have been very difficult. So the TRC was a catalyst for bringing unity in society from 1994 onwards. Though not without its critics, the TRC showed how dialogue can bridge divides and foster a shared humanity. You know what I'm going to do now, Pragya? I would like to stop and maybe open for questions of what we discussed so far, with more focusing on the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, so that we can have like this dialogue between us and the students. So maybe I would like to stop and maybe invite people to talk, because before I go on talk about the Northern Ireland process, let's talk about this Truth and Reconciliation process that I've just discussed, and maybe you'd like to have some more background or some knowledge. Anybody? And put up your hands. I may be able to identify.
You can share your comments, you can share your personal experiences with dialogue, because a lot of you have been conducting dialogue on the ground at the grassroots levels. Or you can ask if there's a struggle that you've had. Vikash, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Especially with the particular example that I used with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may have read about it, and maybe you'd like to have more clarity. I've given you the background. Right, let's start with Vikash.
Okay. This is Vikas, and I am from northern part of India, and currently I am working with as a Gandhi Fellow. And throughout your conversation and listening TRC Commission's work, I remember the Australia indigenous conflict between indigenous and non-indigenous in Australia, and also remember the idea started in to reconciliation, and after that, the government initiated Sorry Day uh, for the who is. Uh, I want to know if you know about the Sorry Day, the background. Also, did in Australia. Uh, I don't know the background, but similar kind of work done in Australia.
Yeah, I don't have very great knowledge about it, but the only knowledge I have that there was a similar process like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that Australia undertook in order to accommodate the atrocities that the indigenous people have experienced whilst the Australian, the contemporary society have taken control of Australia. So it was a similar type of process whereby they got people to come and talk. And then from there arose some very, very interesting new developments that the indigenous people must be acknowledged in every respect of Australian society. So, for example, if somebody goes to a conference and they start a speech, for example, they have to start their speech by saying, we would like to acknowledge the indigenous people background and so on. And so it is a compulsory thing. So there's a new things that have been introduced in the Australian government that recognizes the importance of the indigenous people. Unfortunately, it is not the same like in South Africa, where the indigenous people now have taken control of the country in 1994. The indigenous people are not in control of Australia, but they are given acknowledgement in everything they do. Because I don't think so. They have numerically sound, leadership in order to govern Australia. So it's not like the same in South Africa, where the majority of people in South Africa, we have a population of about 70 million people. We only have 1.8 million Indians, about 3 million whites, 2 million coloreds, and the bulk of them are blacks. So in South Africa, it's a different situation where the majority now is in rule. But there are lots of developments in Australia that acknowledges the indigenous people. They're given preferences in universities, like in India, where the scheduled caste is given percentage of seats in universities and so on. The same thing is happening in Australia. So apart from that, I don't have great knowledge about the thing that you've mentioned. But anyway, let's go to Jay Adlaka.
Hi, sir. Good evening. Yes.
Good evening.
My question is basically a sort of two-parter where you also mentioned that TRC has been criticized a lot. Has been criticized. So can you just shed some light on what the criticisms of TRC focused on? And another thing that like I understood the basic like how the process of TRC worked, because we had it as a sort of case study in our course as well. So I just needed your opinion on like what made it so unique. Where like was it the social and political atmosphere of South Africa that made it unique? That it something like TRC has not been repeated in other countries, right?
Yes, it is
not on that scale. So I just wanted your opinion on what made it so unique that TRC, that it cannot be replicated, or it has not been replicated essentially.
Yeah, the uniqueness. All right. First of all, the first question is about the criticisms. A lot of people criticize because they didn't want to confront the perpetrators, because the atrocities that were caused were so bad, right? People's lives were lost, families were destroyed. The whole education set up in South Africa was destroyed by the apartheid government because they gave menial and mediocre education to the blacks and so on. So there's a lot of people said there was no need for this dialogue. There was no need for this. We've experienced very bad hardships. Why are you giving? But the uniqueness of this is the leader, Nelson Mandela, right? He was a leader of, you cannot describe his uniqueness. The fact that he started He started his leadership as a president by going and having the tea with the people that put him. Now, you know that if you are put in prison for 27 years, it will have so much of hatred and so much of animosity towards the people that put you there, right? But he wanted to show the country that it's better to forgive than to hate. And it's better. And the fact that I went and had tea with the perpetrators that put me there, it's showing the rest of the country that we need to forgive people. We need to sit and have dialogue. And that is why he conceptualized the whole TRC commission. The fact that we need to give people an opportunity to come and talk. So that is what's unique. And that is what's lacking in all the countries in the world. They are not willing to go and talk. They are not willing to find innovative solutions. And I think by doing that, it made the transition to democracy so much more easier, right? Because remember, it was decades of atrocities, decades of problems. People were jailed all over the country. They were put in solitary confinements. Families were destroyed, and so on. And we have a whole list of interesting stuff, of what happened. And the TRC Commission, if you listened to the testimonies of the people, right, it was so emotional. Now, I think that this is what's so unique about this program, to give a platform for both the perpetrator and the victim to come together, right? And listen and find a way in embracing each other. And that's what's so unique. And I believe it's easy to replicate in other countries, but other countries do not engage in this because of the geopolitical setup and because of the political ambitions of people. You will not get another leader like Mandela again. You understand? And that's what the uniqueness of this program is based on the individual that initiated it. And after Mandela left, I must be honest with you, dear colleagues, after Mandela left, gave up his presidency after one term, the country did not go in the same trajectory like him, right? It took a different turn. People came here with political ambitions that were very, very deceitful. They were here only for the political gains. There was so much of nepotism. There's so much of corruption. We have so much of commissions like the Zondo Commission, and then the Guptas came from India and captured the President Zuma and so on. So corruption and nepotism and all is the key this thing. So South Africa under Nelson Mandela today is not the same, right? That's what's unique about that period and what's now. So I'm hoping that other countries where there's serious problems between different people and so on, they should engage and do things like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Let's go to Solomon now. Solomon, sorry, Jay, where are you from?
Sir, I'm from Delhi. I am currently doing my master's in conflict analysis and peace building from Jamia Millia.
Excellent. Right, Solomon?
Yeah, good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for giving a wonderful talk, very inspiring, and really you're drawing us to the dialogue. Now,
we just started now. We never even... Right, carry on, Solomon.
Of course, Nelson Mandela was, after perhaps Gandhi, is one of the most towering personalities and the leader giving us a certain amount of moral courage. I think that morality and spiritual stamina, spiritual strength that he provided to the leadership, in fact, enabled the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to function in a way. Yes, and very interesting that you talked about restorative justice rather than retributive justice. Well, that was very good. It was an excellent way of really bringing all the people together to build South Africa together in that way.
Yes.
I had a little bit of just a doubt. Did say, P.W. Bottom, they were supported by the international other countries, and America initially supported. Only at a later stage, there was no other way but go for the handing over the political power, in a way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was it was a tremendous amount of struggle with a very good victory, actually.
Yes.
But then, did really this restorative justice do actual compassionate justice to the people, where the resources, the land, the resources were still kept with the minority community of whites, whereas still now the blacks and other colored people or Indians did not have access to the land, to the resources available. Did some way really, even today, I think I happened to go to South Africa in 2019 for some conference, but this was very glaring. See, inequality was extremely high, and the insecurity was very, very high in the places where we stayed and all. So the inequality, how is that the restorative justice did not look at the redistribution of wealth in and through the land redistribution to the people? That was one doubt that I had. And one more thing that I would like to ask you is, when Mandela went to have a cup of tea with P.W. Botham, did P.W. Botham feel a sense that we are a little strong? Here are the people who are weak who are coming to us to shake hand with us. Was there a sense of, you are weak people, we are strong people. You are coming to shake hand with us. And therefore, we have a certain amount of moral high-handedness in a way. Was there such a feeling? Was there? I'm just.
There was that feeling. It's a natural feeling because you were in power all these years as a minority rule, and here you're getting Mandela coming. But you know what? The tea function was very cordial. Right, it was very cordial, and it it was very well publicized. It was very much a marketing exercise, I think, on Mandela's part. But you know what? It really made people realize that we have whites at work, we have whites in schools, and so on. Let's all embrace one another. So it did. Although they may have had that feeling, and you do still have, Solomon. The whites still feel that they are more powerful in this country, right? The whites still feel that, but then it's slowly changing. Now, with regard to the restorative, I must tell you that one of the things that came out was very clear was a land distribution. If anybody, now obviously they had to be very well monitored and controlled and administered, right? So if people had any proof of land, for example, if, let's say, my grandfather owned a large tract of land, after the indenture finish, and they were given a piece of land, and because of apartheid, you were forced to move from that land and move to a township. If you had proof, if you had sufficient proof, documents or whatever, that you lived there and you had land, then you were given your compensation. That compensation for that, because obviously the land could not be given back in many cases because buildings have been put up, structures have been done and all. You can't bring it all down. But where the lands were able to be given back were given, or they were given compensation. I'll give you a very good example. One of my aunties, she lived in an area where they had to move because of apartheid and move to a township. Now, she had no document. The only document and the only proof she had was her wedding invitation. That in that wedding invitation, the address of the couple, right, was in that area. And that worked, and they gave her compensation based on that. She produced it. She went to the land claims court. There's a court called the land claims court. And she went there, And a lawyer produced this wedding invitation that proved that she lived in that area, and she was compensated handsomely. So, there were a sense of that. But when you came here and you saw the whites still living very, very affluently, is because that is a situation as it stands, but it's evolving. Blacks are now moving into those areas. Indians have moved away from townships and they moved to more affluent areas depending on the economies of scale. If you had enough money, you can go buy in golf estates, in very well manicured estates and so on. So the complexion of South Africa is changing. Now, I, for example, am seated in an area which is called a gray area, which is mixed. Whites, Indians, coloreds all live together. So that is changing. The complexion is definitely changing. Thank you, Solomon, for that. Yasin?
Thank you.
Oh, you finish, Yasin?
Hello, Dr. Rajendran. I am Yasin from Kolkata. Basically,
okay.
I am a businessman, but I have interest in dialogue. So I have a question that TRC was kind of very successful in South Africa at that time. But if we see in current scenario, in current geopolitical conditions, there are different conflicts going on. Like, how can this be implemented in current situation? And how, can there be any model similar to that can be implemented right now, like in this current situation? For example, in Ukraine and Russia war, or whether it's conflict in Israel, Palestine, all this, I think it can be solved with that way, but how it can be implemented?
Yes, it is a model that can be easily replicated in any part of the world. The model is there. It is a tried and tested model. But like I mentioned earlier on, it all depends on the political leadership in those countries. If they are, because obviously what is very, very clear about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee is people are coming, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. Right? And they don't want to reconcile. So you can't force those countries. The model is there to replicate. And I would think if it was forced upon a country, then maybe, but unfortunately, you cannot force these concepts to people. But Yasin, if, for example, if I was to say that if we take the TRC to Ukraine in Russia, we take this TRC to Palestine and Israel, right? It can easily work. It can bring about peace. It can bring about harmony. It can bring about tolerance amongst people. But it all depends on the political leadership in those countries. Unfortunately, some people don't want to hear the truth. And that's unfortunate. Okay, Ranveer?
Hi.
Yes, Ranveer.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much. So my question is just, you can consider it whether it's a question or comment, but I would like to hear your insight on this thing. This is just something, just new dish on the table. And before I ask this thing, I just want to give a disclaimer that I don't hold any authority on religious matters and all.
Okay.
I was thinking when you are saying that it can be, TRC is something which can be replicated. I was just seeing that 80% of the population in South Africa is Christian. And Christianity as a religion, I'm again saying that I don't hold any authority. This is just, I will be saying that the knowledge about other religion, which I just received through various medias and just exposures with other friends also. So I think because religious affiliation play a significant role how we see things, how we perceive things, and how we react to those things. And within Christianity, the part of the element of confession, the element of looking for forgiveness is having a very strong connotation within the religion itself, and it affects every single Christian who is practicing religion. Now, while relating this thing with TRC, I consider that TRC, it is a voluntary involvement. People are just coming up front. They are just, whether they were the victim or they were the perpetrators, they were coming with their own effort. Nobody just forcing them. Now, while looking for various other religions, for example, if I say as a Sikhism, I'm a Sikh, I'm just not practicing my religion to that hardcore, but I will be having a brief idea about the religion. I have a brief idea about the Hinduism also, because I grown up among Hindus since my childhood, among Muslims also. Now, in other religion, most of them, this dialogue between God and individual is a personal in nature. If something is wrongdoing happened by somebody, or somebody is involved in some kind of wrongdoing, this is a personal dialogue between the person and the God, that, see, I did this thing, this is a bad, please forgive me, or this. On the other hand, in Hinduism, if you say the karma theory, which is saying once something wrong happened, you're destined to receive something in return, which is completely as a some kind of punitive measures. Now, in this context, this coming upfront with voluntary nature, it will be a very difficult proposition, I see, because as I again saying that religion is playing a very significant role how we react to situations. So I think that it is not only the political which is restricting the replication of TRC, but religion might be playing a very significant role. So how you will be commenting upon this?
Yeah, no, you're quite correct. Religion is the main cause of most of the problems that we are experiencing internationally, right?
Not even the problems, but also to the solutions also, the way which we are looking also.
But I must say, and I think you would agree with me, that even in Sikhism, right, like in Hinduism, Islam, and everything, I think no religion practices hatred for mankind, for each other, right? Every religion promotes peace, tolerance, and everything. The scriptures state it very categorically. It also states very categorically about forgiveness and so on. The religion tells you that, but man has now implemented a new doctrine within their own religion, right? And that doctrine is hatred for another religion. And that is the serious problem. When people realize that the prescripts of your religion is to promote harmony, to promote peace, to promote love, and for your fellow human beings and so on, if that proper doctrine is implemented, then we won't have this problem. But man has reworked the religious principles of the religion to suit themselves, unfortunately. And it's something that I'm having difficulty to understand as well, going forward. But I must also say that whilst you say that 80% of the people in South Africa are Christians, right? Amongst the black people, there are many black people that are African traditional religion worshippers, right? They practice African tradition, their traditional religion. Like there's large amounts of people that practice African traditional religion. So not all the blacks are Christians. There are many people that are Christians, but many of them are African. They have African traditional practices, and I think most of them are ancestor worshippers, right? They worship their ancestors, and most of the rituals and everything that are done by African traditional is not directed to a god or goddess or deity, but they are directed to their ancestors. Just like how many of our cultures, for example, I'm from South India, and most of the South Indian religious principles were ancestor worship. Because my PhD was based on the study of the African and Hindu religious practices with a focus on ancestor worship and death rituals. That was my PhD. So in studying that, we find that most of the South Indian people in Tamil Nadu and everything, in the villages and everything, they still worship their ancestors, right? If you go to Kurg in Madikeri and everything, they are very much ancestor worshippers. So what I'm saying is that whilst Christianity had a sense in that element of the Truth and Reconciliation, because remember, the head of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was a clergyman, right? Archbishop Desmond Tutu was a clergyman. They put him there because of his struggle background and because of his religious background. But I must say that I hope we can find solutions to this religious intolerance, and going forward, we hope to do that. Right. Without much further ado, let us now go on to the second example. The second example that I would like to use, and some of you may have already have exposure to it, is the Northern Ireland peace process, which is called the Good Friday Agreement. Right? The context and the background. The Northern Ireland faced decades of conflict known as the Troubles, which began in the late 1960s, the same period as our problem in South Africa, and lasted until 1998. If you look at it, 1960, 1994 was ours. 1960, 1998 was this Northern Ireland problem. This conflict was rooted in political and sectarian tensions between the mainly Protestant Unionists who wanted to remain part of the United Kingdom and the predominantly Catholic nationalists who sought unification with the Republic of Ireland. There you go, Solomon. Christian, right? The Christianity is the main reason for this problem here. The violence resulted in over 3,500 deaths and left deep social divisions between the two communities, the Protestants and the Catholics. The Good Friday Agreement in 1998, right? The Good Friday Agreement. You know what? I suspect here, Solomon. I suspect if you look at 1994, 95 was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the Good Friday Agreement was 1998. So I suspect that TRC had an influence on this. The Good Friday Agreement, also known as the Belfast Agreement, signed in 1998, was a major political development in the Northern Ireland peace process. It brought an end to the Troubles through a negotiated settlement. The agreement was brokered by the British and Irish governments with support from the United States and the European Union, and it involved dialogue between various political parties representing both unionist and national communities. The role of dialogue in this process. The peace process involved sustained dialogue between former enemies. Crucially, it included the participation of political and paramilitary groups who had previously been involved in a conflict. The agreement addressed key issues such as the devolution of powers to Northern Ireland, the establishment of a cross-community government, and the release of political prisoners. It also laid out frameworks for disarmament and for respecting the civil and political rights of both communities. The negotiations leading to the agreement required an atmosphere of compromise and trust building, where all sides had to make significant concessions, just like the TRC. Significance for social cohesion. This agreement, what significance did it have for social cohesion? The Good Friday Agreement is a landmark example of how dialogue can help bridge even the deepest divides, in this case, religious divides. It emphasized power sharing and mutual respect between the two communities, recognizing the legitimacy of both unionist and nationalist aspirations. Though challenges remain, the peace process significantly reduced violence and laid the foundation for a more peaceful and inclusive society. The Northern Ireland experience was emphasized that dialogue, patience, and the willingness to engage with former adversaries can lead to sustainable peace. What are some of the key lessons for social cohesion in both the TRC and this agreement? Number one, honest acknowledgement of past wrongs. Both the TRC and the Northern Ireland peace process show that meaningful reconciliation requires confronting the painful realities of the past. The past is important to develop the present and the future. The dialogue fosters healing when there is an acknowledgement and a commitment to repairing harm. For example, if you have a sickness, whether it's cancer or any other terminal illness, right? You need to be realistic and acknowledge that there is a problem and a commitment to getting better. Then only you can heal. Now, the same thing here. There has to be an acknowledgement and a commitment to repairing the harm. Number 2, inclusivity in dialogue. Successful dialogue involves all parties affected by the conflict, including those who were once considered irreconcilable. The inclusion of diverse voices strengthens the legitimacy of the reconciliation process. And that is why it's important. It is important in a dialogue process to get all people to share their views in a very, very nice way. And this strengthens the legitimacy of reconciliation. Number 3, restorative justice. A focus on healing relationships rather than punitive measures helps societies move forward. Because if you had to go and give punitive justice, then you're going to get more harm. You're going to get more discord. You're going to get more disunity. But if it is a restorative justice and healing the relationship, the society will move forward in a peaceful way. The dialogue allows for the restoration of trust and the building of a shared future. That word trust is crucial in a dialogue process. We need to trust each other as we are sitting around the table. Number 4, sustained effort. Dialogue is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. The TRC and Northern Ireland show that achieving lasting peace requires continuous engagement and adaptability over time. Right up till today, people are still making reference to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. They are still talking about the restorative justice. They are still talking about healing, which is fine as long as people understand that there must be an end product. And then number 5, the role of mediators. And you are, all of you that are on this platform, are engaging in the 6 months course because you want to engage in dialogue. You want to be mediators. The role of mediators is crucial in a dialogue. In both cases, neutral or external mediators like Desmond Tutu in South Africa and international actors in Northern Ireland played key roles in facilitating dialogue and ensuring that discussions were conducted in good faith. And I think all of you that have engaged in the 6 month program, your ultimate ambition or intention is to be that mediator in dialogue that are confronting people in society, whether it's within your local village, town, country, or outside, or within your own grouping or whatever. You are going to be that catalyst for change, and the manner in which you act and your role that you play in facilitating the dialogue is crucial. Both the TRC and the Northern Ireland peace process demonstrate how dialogue can transform societies marked by deep conflict into ones that prioritize reconciliation and social cohesion. So that is the example of Northern Ireland. Very similar to the Truth and Reconciliation, but here it was between two communities, both based on one religion, but two different faiths in that religion. And that is the whole process that took place here in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement was a result of years of dialogue between conflicting parties. It is a powerful example of how sustained dialogue can lead to peace in a region long troubled by sectarian violence. And that is this particular example. So I'm not going to ask you for questions now. You can keep your questions down and you can ask me later. What I want to do now is to look at the difference between dialogue versus debate, right? Or I think Lawan, Batna, maybe let me take your hand. Lawan, Batna.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon. It's afternoon here, actually. I'm Lawan Batna. I'm from Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
I'm from Nigeria.
A fellow African.
So you were talking about you were talking about restorative justice, and I happen to stay from northern Nigeria, where the Boko Haram is. In fact, I'm from Borno State. That is this epicenter of where Boko Haram started. Right? Are you with me?
Yes, I am here with you.
So my question. Yeah. So my question here is that I work in the humanitarian I work as a humanitarian for more than 6 years. While reintegrating people that have committed a lot of harm, have killed a lot of people, burnt their houses, and all that. So there was a pardon for some people, and these insurgents were taken back into the society. And to some extent, after whatever trauma healing, reintegration processes and all that. But then the people of the community are still very, very angry that the government are trying to bring insurgents back into the society. What is the dividing line to that? Because the truth is that realistically, yes, I know the UN says all about this kind of things, bring them back and all that, but practically it's very impossible, because you can't, the complaint we often get is that this person killed my dad and he's back in the society. How can I just be looking at him, doing whatever he wants to do at this moment? So there's still tension. Can it be practical? Is dialogue, which I don't know, maybe you could understand what I'm saying, but it's really, really, it has not come to stay. It has not come to stay with all the scenarios. So I don't know how that can be possible. Maybe you could shed a little light on that.
Yeah, that's a higher grade question, especially in a situation that you have been, articulating. Yes, Lawan, it's very difficult. It depends on the geopolitical situation. It depends on the country. It depends on the people. So the success of any dialogue and mediation depends on the beneficiaries and the people that are facilitating the dialogue, the trust that we need to gain. The word trust is very key. The trust that we need to gain in a dialogue process, it is often very difficult. And I know politically, the areas that you have mentioned and examples you have mentioned are very, very difficult to understand. And it's the same in Palestine, in Israel, and so on. So, you know what? All I can say is that, if something starts and it's not working, we need to find ways in which we can mitigate those challenges that are putting blocks in the dialogue process and find opportunities to engage further. We must not give up, because when you give up, then you are, as a facilitator and as a dialogue specialist, then you are defeating what you have been meant to be doing. So what I would suggest is, in a situation like that, where an attempt was made for meaningful dialogue between two warring factions, and if there is some element of success, but there's a majority or the greater percentage is unsuccessful responses, then we need to find ways in which we can mitigate it and then continue with the dialogue. That's what I would like to say. In the dialogue process, we must not give up. We need to persevere, find more innovative ways, find more ways in which we can mitigate it and go on from there. So that's what I would like to recommend going forward. So let us now go on to the issue regarding debate versus debate versus dialogue. Now, this often is very, very important. If we can find the difference between these two, then we are on the road to success. Because when you debate, it's more formal, it's more, debate is about winning an argument. Dialogue is not about winning an argument. It often involves defending, a debate is often involves defending one's own position and undermining the others. Whereas dialogue, on the other hand, is about understanding, right? Understanding a problem, understanding what can be done in order to bring about a solution. Whereas a debate, like you find when what's his name? Donald Trump was debating against Kamala Harris. They have their own versions, and it's not a dialogue, because they each one want to prove to the electorate who's stronger. And in a debate, that's the whole idea. When you take part in a debating contest in schools or in universities, the whole idea of a debate to see who's the winner. You need to find the winner. Whereas with a dialogue, it is not about winning. It is about active, empathetic listening, which is central to dialogue. So let us now look at this very key concept. Right. The primary goal of dialogue is understanding, connection, and collaboration. Participants engage in conversations to explore ideas, perspectives, and feelings, often seeking common ground or deeper mutual understanding. Dialogue is about listening to others, reflecting on their experiences, and fostering empathy. An example, in a dialogue about social inequality, the participants would focus on understanding each other's lived experiences, trying to grasp why they hold certain beliefs and values without attempting to challenge or dismiss them. Whereas a debate, the primary goal of a debate is to win or prove a point. When you debate with somebody, you want to prove a point. Participants in a debate are focused on defending their position while challenging the views of others. Debate is competitive, with the aim of convincing the other party or an audience that one's argument is much more superior than the other. And that is what I meant by Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. An example, in a debate on social inequality, participants would aim to prove why their perspective on the root causes and solutions is correct, using evidence and argumentation to dismantle the opposing viewpoint. Now, the approach to the other side. Dialogue. In a dialogue, participants view each other as collaborators. There is a mutual respect, and the conversation is shaped by curiosity rather than judgment. The participants are open to learning from each other, and they allow space for uncertainty and exploration. For example, when two individuals from different political backgrounds engage in a dialogue to understand why they support different policies, genuinely interested in learning about each other's fears, hopes, and reasons for the beliefs. In a debate, participants see each other as opponents. There is a competitive tone with the focus on defending one's own ideas and discrediting the other person's. The debate often involves zero-sum thinking, where the process of one argument is seen as the failure of the other. In a political debate, each person works to understand the other's position by pointing out flaws, inconsistencies, or weak points in the opponent's arguments. Now, I need to explain why the role of listening is crucial in dialogue. In dialogue, active, empathetic listening is central to dialogue. The focus is on understanding the other person's perspective, which requires deep listening without preparing a counter argument while the other person is speaking. That is very disrespectful when somebody is speaking for interjection. In a proper dialogue, you give the person an opportunity to speak. Silence, reflection, and openness are the key elements of a dialogue. In a dialogue about cultural differences, participants would deeply listen to each other's personal experiences, trying to see the world through the lens of the other culture without interrupting or challenging them. Because the idea at the end of that discussion about the cultural differences is not to see whose culture is better, but just to learn through the lens of the other culture. Debate, on the other hand, listening in a debate is often strategic, with the goal of finding weaknesses in the opponent's argument. So when you debate, you will be jotting down all the points that you feel that you want to counter the other person, instead of listening to understand, because in a debate, you're not listening to understand, you're listening to counter, right? The participants listen to respond or refute. During a debate on immigration policy, one person listens to find a flaw in the other's statistics or logic in order to point out and strengthen their own case. Right. Now, the outcome of a dialogue and debate. The outcome of dialogue is often deeper understanding, mutual respect, and stronger relationships. There is no winner or loser in a dialogue. And the outcome is often growth in perspective, compassion, and sometimes collaboration. After a dialogue between people with differing views on climate change, for example, they may not fully agree, but they will have a better understanding of each other's concerns and values about climate change, and may even find common goals to work forward together. In a debate, the outcome of the debate is typically one person or group winning based on the strengths of their argument or evidence. The success of a debate is judged by who presented the most convincing argument, not by whether mutual understanding was achieved. In a debate on climate change policies, one side may be declared the winner based on their ability to present stronger evidence and counter arguments, but neither party necessarily understands the other better because they weren't listening. Right? And the emotion and tone of dialogue and debate. Dialogue is typically characteristic by a calm, reflective, and respectful tone. Even when emotions run high, the goal is to maintain an atmosphere where everyone feels heard and valued. Emotions are acknowledged and validated as part of the experience. In a dialogue on racial injustice, participants may express strong emotions, but the space is designed to be safe for sharing and processing those feelings rather than escalating into a conflict. On the other hand, a debate often features a more adversarial tone, and emotions may run high, especially when participants feel their beliefs are under attack. Emotions like frustration or anger can intensify as each side tries to dominate the other. At the end of the day, they want the audience to see who's the winner. In a debate on racial injustice, emotions may fuel passionate arguments, but the atmosphere is often more charged, and the goal is not to process emotions, but to counter or defend positions. And this leads to so charged that sometimes in a debate on racial injustice or political sensitive topics, they throw chairs at one another. You look at the debate that takes place in Parliament, even in the Raj Sabha and upper house and everything. How they bang the tables, how they scream, how they, in some places, in some political countries, they even throw chairs, they even throw books, they throw things at people because that's how charged they become in a debate rather than in a dialogue. Now, let's focus on solutions versus being right. In a dialogue prioritizes solutions, collaboration, and consensus. It seeks to move beyond the binary of right and wrong, and participants often work together to create new ideas or strategies that incorporate diverse perspectives. The debate, on the other hand, focus on defending one's own solutions or viewpoint and proving it to be the correct one. The emphasis is more on winning and intellectual contest than on finding a compromise. Why dialogue is more effective for bridging divides and fostering social cohesion. Now, you will be going out onto the field. You'll be going and helping your community. So this is very important. Number one, dialogue builds trust. Dialogue creates an environment of respect and understanding, which builds trust between people or groups with differing views. Trust is essential, dear colleagues, for creating lasting change and cohesion. Number two, it promotes empathy. By listening deeply and seeking to understand others, dialogue fosters empathy. This is crucial in societies with deep divisions, as it helps humanize the other and reduce hostility. Yes, humanize. We are part of one humanity. There's a very interesting African concept which is called Ubuntu. It's spelled Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu is an African concept which means I am me because of you. I cannot exist if you cannot exist. So that is why it's important that we all work together. It's the same, I think, of the concept of Vasudeva Kudumbakam. The world is one big community. So it's the same concept, right? And that is why dialogue builds empathy and it helps humanize the other. The next part, it opens the door for collaboration. Dialogue encourages collaboration by focusing on shared goals rather than divisive issues. It allows for the creation of solutions that consider multiple perspectives. And then lastly, it transforms relationships. Instead of reinforcing entrenched positions, dialogue allows relationships to evolve. Participants leave the conversation with a greater appreciation for differing viewpoints and a willingness to work together in a future. So those are the core principles of dialogue: active listening, empathy, respect, and patience and open-mindedness. Those are the main key principles of effective dialogue. Now, let's look at some practical applications of dialogue, because this is where you are going to be featuring in your communities. When you finish this course, you're going to go fully armed with the necessary tools to go and be a facilitator of meaningful dialogues. Firstly, interfaith dialogue. In today's multi-religious societies, interfaith dialogue is essential. It promotes understanding and peaceful coexistence among different faiths. For example, interfaith councils often bring together leaders from different religions to discuss common values and community issues. Now, it is very, very important to bring this. Now, we have, I belong to an interfaith dialogue structure. And every month we meet and we have topics which we present in advance, and the different religious groups come and they talk about these things. And then we go back to our own constituencies and we talk about it. So the more interfaith dialogues we have, then people become better understanding. For example, in South Africa, during Deepavali, Oh, there's a hue and cry. There's so much of people on social media. There are newspapers. There's people at the white people and other communities target the Hindu community that there are cruelty to animals and it's pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, and all the stuff. But when you go and you talk about it and you come to a common understanding, then the Hindu people will take more precautions in overcoming some of those injustices. I, for example, is not a proponent of the fireworks because I don't believe that it is a good example of celebrating Deepavali. But then we have to respect the views of other people. And that is why in South Africa, after all these dialogues, they've come to an understanding that there will be fireworks can only be used during certain times from Deepavali, from one period to another day, to the next day, just so many hours, and it has to stop at a certain time at night so that people can sleep peacefully, and the dogs must be given calming tablets and everything. So all these things came about as a result of the dialogues, so that people can still practice the culture and then at the same time still be cognizant of the harm that they're causing to the community. Then the second, after interfaith dialogue, another practical application is cross-cultural communication. In our globalized world, cross-cultural dialogue helps to bridge gaps between different ethnic and cultural groups. It promotes inclusion and reduces prejudices, making it easier to work together in diverse settings. So what we've done in South Africa as part of our social cohesion program, and because South Africa is rich in cultural diversity, remember, in South Africa, we have whites, Africans, which is black Africans, we have Indians, we have coloreds, and we have other races like Chinese and so on. And amongst the Indian people, we have Hindus, who further divided into Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, and Gujarati speaking Hindus. And then we have Muslims, and then we have Christians. So we have a whole variety of people. So we have a rich, diverse country. That is why we have a commission which is called the CRL Commission, which is the Commission for the Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Rights. So if people feel that a constitutional right is being violated and the culture and the religion and dialogue is being violated, the linguistic is being violated, then they can go to the commission for recourse. So why I'm saying this is because we encourage people at workplaces, in school. For example, in September, South Africa has declared September as Heritage Month. During that month, we advise and we ask people to showcase the different cultures and so on in schools, in universities and so on. People need to share, they need to dress culturally, they need, in a workplace, for example, they need to choose a date and they all come share their costume, their cuisine and their culture. So we are encouraging this cross-cultural communication because to overcome the prejudices of the past, we have encouraged this. Then the third thing is conflict resolution. Dialogue is a key tool in resolving conflicts. Whether it's in a community dispute or an international negotiation, dialogue helps parties move from confrontation to cooperation. For instance, community mediation programs often use dialogue to resolve local disputes. Now, just like the old system, I don't know if it still exists in India, where you have the village councils. Now, in South Africa, we also still have that we have two type of governance structures in South Africa. We have the political governance structure with the president, the ministers, and all this, the mayors and the councillors and everything. That is the political governance. And we also have a traditional leadership structure. Right. We have a traditional leader, we have a Zulu king, we have a Xhosa king, we have a Sotho king, and we have traditional councils and all this stuff. So people can take the disputes to either a court of justice that is appointed by political dispensation, or they can go to traditional council and resolve. So the traditional council are more dialogue centered. right? Where they give an opportunity, like how you did in the olden days in India, under the tree, the people came and they spoke about the problems, and the traditional head of that village came, the grandma, the person that came, and he resolved the conflict. Now here we still have that type of situation in South Africa under traditional leadership. Then now we are in a technological advanced society with artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution. Online dialogue. The digital age has brought new opportunities and challenges for dialogue. Online platforms can connect people from around the world, but it can also lead to misunderstanding and conflicts. Effective online dialogue requires the same principle of respect, empathy, and active listening rather than making comments that are unjustified and so on. And recently, the social media has been a serious problem. 2 years ago, there was a serious problem in South Africa, especially in the province where I live in, KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, where there was a conflict between the blacks and the Indians. It brewed into a racial conflict. But the biggest problem that fueled that racial conflict was social media. People were posting videos of events that did not even occur in this place, of events where people were killing each other, where they were shooting, where they were, violent forms of, example. And that social media ignited and brewed a serious racial conflict that for weeks, this whole place was under, we had, where we were forced to stay at home and we were not allowed in the streets. We had curfew and everything for about over a month until the matter has been resolved. So online dialogue can be very good, but it also has its disadvantages. Now, let's move on to now engaging in dialogue. We need to set the scene first. Now, you're going to go out there and you're going to have dialogue as mediators. You need to set the scene first. The environment where dialogue takes place is important. It should be a safe and neutral space where participants feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and experience. The word neutral is very important. When you're having a dialogue, take it to a neutral place. Number 2, framing the question. Good dialogue often begins with open-ended questions that invite deeper reflection. For example, instead of asking, "Do you agree with this?" you might ask, "What experiences have shaped your view on this issue?" So you give the person an opportunity to talk and not give you one-word answer. Because if you ask, "Do you agree with this?" you're going to say no or yes. But when you ask, "What experiences have shaped your view on this issue?" then they will give you a nice response. Then dealing with disagreements. Disagreements are natural in dialogue. The key is to approach them with a spirit of curiosity rather than confrontation. Ask clarifying questions and try to understand the reasoning behind different perspectives. Then you need to ensure inclusivity. In any dialogue, it is important that all voices are heard. This might mean actively encouraging quieter participants to share their thoughts or being mindful of power dynamics that could silence some voices. As a facilitator in a dialogue session, do not allow anybody to over-empower the dialogue. Give people opportunities. As a facilitator, you need to continually and consistently ask people, to give their views and so on, so that the quieter participants are also given an opportunity to talk and try to control people who are overpowering, right? So basically, colleagues, this is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about today. to give you a perspective of dialogue, to give you the difference between debate and dialogue, to give you two examples of international dialogue sessions that were very, very powerful, right? And I've given you the different aspects of the core principles of dialogue and practical applications of dialogue and how to engage in a dialogue session. Now, let's have some questions and let's see how we can all work. Not only questions, but maybe you have some practical examples of what we discussed in your own life situations that you would like to share with this group and me, right? Because every time we go, every time we leave sessions of this nature, we need to be fully empowered. And I can be empowered by you if you can give me some meaningful examples of situations in your own scenarios, and that I can also use in my own communities. Randall Sequeira.
Hello.
Yes.
I wanted to, it's a question as well as an experience that I would like to share.
Tell us where you're from, Randall.
I'm from Odisha, and I work as a primary care physician over here. But
you work as a
primary care physician over here. And
okay.
I have been, since the last 1 year, I have been visiting, there's a northeastern state of India called Manipur,
yes,
where there has been an ethnic conflict that has been going on for last almost 1.5 years.
Okay.
And I've visited the place about 4 times, and each time spending about 10 to 15 days over there. And there's a very strong, with both communities which are now separated across the geographies, there is a very strong justice before peace narrative. It's an ongoing conflict, and this aspect of we want justice before there can be any talk about peace that is going very strongly, and I also for reasons of what I understood as earlier structural inequalities. I visited the hill areas or one community more than the other. So at least certainly, so I would like to state that as something that I have done on principle.
Excellent.
And personally, from you, you have shared these in the two examples about the TRC and the Northern Ireland aspect as a third person almost. And I was wondering if you could also share about your own experience with the TRC and an aspect of that you might have facilitated a dialogue or you would have been part of a dialogue that was being facilitated, if possible.
Okay, so personally, I did not go and give evidence at the TRC, although because you see, the TRC was mostly for people that had serious repercussions that arose out of apartheid, where families have lost lives, where people have lost homes, they've been destroyed by apartheid and so on. Now, fortunately, the only experience that I had of apartheid is the inconsistency of how we lived. For example, I was forced to live in an Indian township. I was forced to go to a school of only Indians. I was forced to go to a park and sit on a bench where it was written non-whites. I was forced to go to a cinema. And I'll give you an example. For example, when I was an educator teaching in a school, and I should take my matriculants, my grade 12 learners, every year for a 3-day excursion to a area where, I was a geography teacher. So I go to a area where, they can learn, and so what happened? I took these children. Now, when they go on this 3-day journey, they're bringing a lot of pocket money. But fortunately, we as educators and the school have provided the facilities and provided the food and snacks and everything. So there was no need for them to use the pocket money. So on the way back, when they were coming home, these children, were begging me to stop so that they can buy things at a shop and at a garage. So we stopped the 2 buses there, and we stopped. And the children. Now this was in a place called Belfast, which is a Afrikaner place, only whites, and here they had a hatred for blacks and Indians and everything. So we stopped. This was the only garage en route. So we stopped there, and the children rushed to go and buy things inside. But as they were going inside, I observed that the owner of the shop started deploying black workers at different places to monitor the children. So I was wondering what's happening. So I quietly asked one of the black workers, what is happening here? Why is all these people going and standing at different... They said, no, the white boss told me that these Indian children are coming here and they will steal and everything. So please just watch them carefully. So anyway, I let children go and buy. So now you must remember the children were ordering hamburgers, they were ordering chicken, they were ordering stuff, and they were ordering in large amounts. And their orders were being prepared in a bag. I stood and I watched this thing taking place. And then I told when the children was about to pay, I stopped and I said, children, please, I have an announcement to make. Let us leave now because we are considered as thieves in this place. And I don't think so that our money is any valuable here. So let us leave everything as it is and let's leave. Hey, and that white boss, now you must remember, they prepared so much of things for the children. And then the children now look at me shocked. I said, no, go to the bus and I will give you a proper education of why I told you to do this. So the children listened and they went, and this white guy. Then he came to me, I said, no, you know what? First of all, you don't do this for everybody. But because the children came here, you deployed people to look at them because you thought they were thieves. And my children are not thieves. So because they are considered thieves, I don't want them to support your business. And he said, who's going to pay for all this? I said, you find somebody to give the food to. And then I went to the bus and I explained to the children, this is what apartheid is all about. This is what we need to understand, that if we are not wounded, we must show the people, we must show the perpetrators that we are strong. And there are a number of examples, but another very interesting example that happened 2 years ago. Now, xenophobia is very, very big in South Africa, right? Because there's lots of people from foreign African countries, from Zimbabwe, from Botswana, from Lesotho, from Malawi, from Democratic Republic of Congo. They all come to South Africa because South Africa is a home of development. And those countries, there's no jobs, there's, poverty is rife. So they come to South Africa to work and so on. So there's lots of animosity between the locals and the foreigners. So there was a serious problem in a place called Eastern Cape. And because I'm a social cohesion advocate and I'm responsible for the Rapid Response Task Team, the Rapid Response Task Team has Pragya mentioned in the beginning, is responsible for addressing xenophobia, racism, bullying, and everything. So I immediately flew because what happened there was an accident, a simple accident where a Somalian driver of a vehicle, he has a business, he drove into a taxi, a minibus taxi, a 15-seater taxi. He bumped the vehicle by mistake. So the taxi driver came and there was a skirmish on the street between these two people, the Somalian and the local taxi association. And that was at the potential of igniting into a serious problem that could be replicated in all parts of the country. So when it came to my year, I immediately went there, flew up to Eastern Cape, to a place called Port Elizabeth. And then I called the Somalian Business Association, which was responsible for this guy. And I called the Taxi Association leadership, and we brought them around the table, and we had a dialogue. We had a dialogue in a neutral place, and then I explained to them that it was a simple accident that caused this, but it has a potential for causing serious disharmony in the country. If that happens, more Somalians are going to be affected in other parts of the country, and taxis are going to be destroyed and so on. So let us find a meaningful solution. Then I explained to the Somalian business people, I said, for your businesses to survive, you need the taxis to bring passengers to come and purchase. So you need them. And I told the taxi guys, right, for y'all to survive, right, you need the Somalian businesses. You need the Somalian businesses so that the taxi. So both of you need each other, right? So why must we fight further? So let's come to a compromise. Let's get this taxi fixed up, and because they also destroyed some of the Somalian shops. I said, let's get all that sorted out and let's live in peace and harmony because we need each other. And then I asked them to go out after the dialogue and after the meaningful solution. Then I asked the two leaders to make a public statement on national TV, because the TV was there, make a public statement to say that the matter has been resolved and there's no need for any further discussion. That potentially put an end to the serious repercussions that incident would have had, all through meaningful dialogue. So like that, there's lots of examples that I could give you, and then, I must say, in rewarding the community of Eastern Cape, in rewarding them. So what we did, we had a cultural program, which we call a multicultural festival of costume, cuisine, and culture. So we had a big festival where the Department of Arts and Culture funded it. And we asked all those foreigners, the Somalians, the Nigerians, the blacks, the Indians, the whites, the coloreds, all to come together and showcase the cuisine, showcase the culture in the form of music, dance, and the costume, etc. And we rewarded them, and that's how we ended this whole thing. So there was a series of events that happened, and like that, we hardly have problems because we have these interventions. So these are some of the examples. Let's hear Dr. Danny Matthew John.
Just to add one thing to this, the first part of the question, Mr. Rajendran, the aspect of, especially during conflict, when there is this demand for justice, before any aspect of peace or dialogue or any of these aspects can come in. How can that, something along those lines?
So in that dialogue process, it is very, very important to set the ground rules before you start, right? In other words, the outcomes is going to be restorative rather than any other. So you need, when you're engaging in a dialogue, to say that the structure of the dialogue will be like this, and the outcomes of the dialogue will be this. And this is what we have. So if anybody have any inhibitions or they have any expectations of getting justice and so on, then you may be in the wrong place. So you need to set the ground rules from the beginning, because or else the dialogue is going to turn into a disaster. So you need, in any dialogue situation, you need to set everything, the tone, the outcomes, and what's going to happen. And by doing that, and that is why South Africa also has moved into a new concept, which is not new, it's old, but it's very much implemented, which is called alternative dispute resolution. right? Alternative dispute resolution rather than normal justice in courts. So the reason why people are being encouraged to go to the ADR route is because the courts are so full, and it takes so many months before you can get a court date and a hearing, and it takes a mighty long time for peace to be brought about. And also it's very costly to engage attorneys, advocates and everything. So they're moving into the alternative dispute resolution network. And I'm on the panel of the alternative dispute resolution network as well. So what we do there is where people have a choice of going to an ADR network at minimal cost, and the mediator will listen to both sides of the story in a form of a dialogue. They listen to the victim and the other person. They listen, whether it's a marital dispute, whether it's a labor dispute, a community dispute, or whatever. They listen to both sides of the story, and from the beginning, the mediator will tell them the outcome of this. Remember, the outcome of this ADR. You have chosen the option of an alternative dispute, and the outcome. And when I give you the report, and you both agree and sign, you cannot go to a normal court after that because you have chosen this path. So they need to understand that the outcome is based on a resolution between both, and they will come to a meaningful settlement. So these things are important, Randall, to do it from the beginning. You need to set the tone and the scene and the outcome. Let's go now to Dr. Wezi, Danny, Matthew, John. Your hand was up early on.
Oh, yes. Hello, sir. Hello, everyone. Very good talk, sir. Actually, my question was on
from Danny.
Yeah. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah. Where are you from, and what do you do?
I am from Kerala, and I am working as a public health specialist. Just recently moved to my hometown, Trivandrum.
Okay.
So. Sir, actually, my first question was based on the same question that Dr. Randall had asked regarding the Manipur violence, which is like kind of unending, and there is no amicable solution. So I wanted to know, I know there's a person, I think from Manipur or from the northeast states, I think Rishikanta. So I wanted to know, is someone purposefully trying to avoid dialogue, or are a group of people do they actually want to stop all dialogue and continue with this violence? Because it has been happening for a long time. And
yes.
The second thing, similar thing, after you can say the right wing politics came into power, or you can say the BJP has come into power, our country is seeing a lot of beef lynching incidents, which were not very common before. So, talking about India, I think we say that we are a very developed country, but still we have these kind of things that really are bad for the society, as well as it's ruining our reputation on a global scale. And the third thing that you can take, it's my comment actually. I recently had peer-reviewed a paper on intellectual humility and conflict resolution. So now I can disclose it because now the paper is published. So I think for a healthy dialogue to happen, one has to understand intellectual humility. That is the ability to recognize the limits of one's knowledge and beliefs, and to be open to change. Means being less influenced by our own motives or intentions, and being open to new information. So these were my three doubts.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. John. Right. As a medical practitioner, you are in the best position to know that when you diagnose something to a patient, you you try to mitigate it by giving certain pharmaceutical intervention or some ailment treatment or regime that you will provide for that particular patient. And sometimes it may not work, and they come back to a second time. You'll find alternative ways in which you can, maybe there's new medicines in the market, maybe there's a new treatment. Somebody have presented a new paper on how to overcome that particular illness. So it's all, trial and error. However, it is the saddest thing in most of these countries. The actual villains are not the perpetrators of the actual incident. The actual villains are working in the background. They are the politicians. They are other leaders with selfish motives, right? They don't want peace and tranquility because they will be losing out, right? They inject or they fuel the fires in these incidences because of selfish motives. Now, those are the people that we need to reach out to. Those are the people that we need to reach out before the actual people, because the politicians need to have a buy-in. They need to understand that this conflict is so long, it's causing serious ramifications and repercussions, and we need to end it. But it is not ending because of the political interference, right? Political interference or other interference, because of selfish motives, because of voters that need to support them or whatever. You align yourself to a certain group because you feel that there is a substantial amount of votes that's going to come from there. So those are the people that are the perpetrators, the actual perpetrators of these problems. And we need to target them. We need to go and reach out to them. And that is why, for example, when I had this dialogue in Port Elizabeth with the Somalians and the taxi association, I invited the local police services, I invited the local councillors, I invited the local member of parliament to the meeting to come and sit and observe. The reason why, we wanted them to realize how serious this problem will be if it is replicated elsewhere. So we need to also target them. So I'm hoping that, the Manipur issue, which is for so long now, while I was in Delhi last year as well, I was hearing about it so often. And as a social cohesion advocate, I felt for the people there that are victims of political selfish motives, that. And then you mentioned something about India having lots and lots of these. Yes, India is such a diverse country. It's it will be like difficult for me to understand there will be permanent peace and prosperity in India with over 1 billion people, with a rich cultural, religious, linguistic diversity. In every state you go, it's different. There's different leadership, there's different people, they have different aspirations and everything. So in a country like India, with such a rich cultural, religious, and linguistic diversity, there ought to be problems. But there are also opportunities of trying to overcome those problems. It may not be, we may not reach a paradise situation in India, like in many other countries, because then we'll be living in an abnormal society where everything is perfect. I always tell people, if we expect that everybody will have the same wealth, they have the same abilities, they have the same strengths and everything, then we'll be living in a paradise. And when we live in a paradise, there is no need to pray to God anymore, because we're in a paradise. So I'm saying there is these opportunities for discord. But if the discord is harming the society, the community, and so on, then it's a role of Dr. Danny Matthew John as an advocate for dialogue to go and try and persevere to see how we can mitigate those challenges. And the rest of you, whether it's Dr. Purvi Verma, Rishikanta, Azim Khan, or any one of you, you will have the ability to go and saying, you know what? I am now a mediator. I want to assist in trying to find some meaningful situation. And maybe one of you one day will get a Nobel Peace Prize. Nothing, it's not too distant, it's not too far, right? And it's not impossible. Maybe maybe a few years, Pragya is going to phone me or contact me and tell me, you know what? One of those students that you lectured on 16th of October 2024 is in running for the Nobel Peace Prize. How proud that will be. Yes, you have the potential. And the fact that you choose doing this cause is because you have that in your that interest. And I'm so proud of you. Thanks for that lovely hearts, Vikash. Right. Anyone else? We have, I think, 4 minutes.
Yes.
Right. Any last few comments or questions? But I must say it was an absolute delight talking to you today.
And I'm very sure that everybody else also, because we had a lot of questions for you, which is without me prompting and asking for it. It was all very organic. People were asking by themselves. Also, I had this...
Because this course is continuing, if there's any other questions in the comments and everything, you just email it to me. Right. And I will respond and you can share it amongst the people. Right. If there's something that was not responded to. So you just share it with me and I will try my best to respond. I wish I could have done this virtually, physically. It would have been so much more better. We could have an interaction. I had a lovely practical exercise for you all to do and so on in terms of dialogue. But unfortunately, on this virtual platform, it was impossible. So anything else?
There's just one comment that, came to my mind when you were talking about restorative justice. So that is something so I have done this multiple times, this meditation camp called Vipassana, where you basically go and you don't speak for about 10 days and you sort of just listen to your own body. And, you actually observe the sensations when you're angry, what are the sensations on your body, and when you think negatively and when you think positively. So, you sort of observe and then you kind of also realize how much you harm yourself when you are thinking, when you think of revenge or when you're thinking that somebody else who's harmed you has got punishment. And in the end, they show you a movie where this program was done in Tihar jail, which is like the Delhi's famous jail prison. And then they at the end of this program there were people who murdered somebody and people whose family was murdered. So they kind of did it together, and they actually the sisters of the boy who was murdered, they tied Rakhi. That is like the Indian tradition of
I know that.
So they tied Rakhi to oh lovely to the murderer, and they forgave, and then they kept in touch, and every year they would come and tie Rakhi. So there have been I think there've been a lot of even some of my co-peace builders in the US have done a lot of work in restorative justice, and they've actually it's also part of the legal system where they have the option of sort of opting for an sort of out of court settlement, but they actually don't do it for more serious crimes. They say that, okay, we can do it for murders, but we cannot do it for rape because there's a lot of trauma where the perpetrator and the person who faced the violence, sort of come and sit on the same table. So yeah, I think that is something, restorative justice is something I have like loads of hope for in the future. It is, I really think that anybody here should actually read about it and look at the case studies where it's been successful, not been successful, because it is the next in thing. It is going to come. It is something that will, we cannot keep putting people in prison or, punishing them when the society as a whole ends up, has actually, what you're saying is just the fruit of what the society has created. And you have to work on the roots. So that's one of the things.
Yeah, no, and now that you mentioned Rakhi and Deepavali is around the corner, so what we have promoted here in South Africa is that what happens during Rakhi, you go and tie a string for your brother and so on, and you get a sweet meat or whatever. So we've encouraged people to go tie it to the black and whites and everybody, to other cultural groups, and that's the significance of the brotherly love. And even with Deepavali, we are encouraging people, when you are making these sweet meats and everything, you are normally giving it to your family or to your neighbor who are Indians or Hindus and so on. Take it and give it to another cultural group and embrace, because the more you do this, it becomes infectious. And then you'll be sharing your culture, your values and everything, and it becomes so interesting. No, we have we need to find innovative ways and think out of the box in finding ways to resolve a country's problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Govender. It was absolutely a pleasure to have you. I'm sure all of the students are taking back a lot to think about, and we will be sharing the reflections with you as well once they submit it and once we've gone through them. And so yes, thank you so much, and we do look forward to seeing you in India very soon again.
Okay,
the thank yous are pouring in.
No, definitely. It's a pity when I was there 4 months last year, I could have easily met all of you. But yes, another opportunity comes, I'll definitely be there. And I once again thank every one of you. It was your questions and your comments were very valuable, thought-provoking. I may not have answered all your questions, but I hope that we can meet again. But thank you, and all the best to the remainder of your course. And I'm hoping that you will take what you learned from the 6 months and go and make society a better place to live in. Right? That Vasudeva Kudumbakam must be a reality. It must be a real thing. Okay. Thank you so much. All the best. Enjoy your evening, your supper, and your family.